Good afternoon, folks. Back with another video, part 2 of the torque converter one. The last time we talked about matching your torque converter to your rear end gear for street driving. So the idea being that at 60 miles an hour you want the RPM to be equal to your rated stall. And one example that I came up with that seems to be common and would work well is if you had a 373 gear and a 3000 stall torque converter, that would work pretty well on the street without too much slippage. But now the purpose of a torque converter is mostly drag racing. So now I'm going to look at how you match up your torque converter to the shift point that you use. Now I use 1 to 2 shift points because 2 to 3 the RPM drop is actually less in any transmission I've seen. So the one that's important is 1 to 2, and so that's the way I'm doing this one here. And I have them listed here: 5, 5500, 6, 65, and 7. That's about where it would be for a street and strip car. Obviously there's race cars that shift at higher RPMs, but I'm not going there really. Though if you follow the pattern, you can figure it out. I calculated these using a Wallace Racing calculator, which is easily found. So my example here is with a mismatch to see what the consequence of mismatching is. This one here is a 4000 stall converter and shifting at 5500 RPM. So that would be basically putting a pretty hot converter with a fairly stock engine. And the purple line here shows what the RPM would be with zero slippage. And so you rev up to 5500, you shift, and it drops down here to 32. According to this calculator, 3274. But with the 4000 stall converter, the true drop would be where the red line is. It would drop to about 4000, and it would remain flat for a while until then it starts to go up once it locks and it's going fast enough to work properly. Now this area down here makes kind of a triangle. This area represents slippage. Now if your stall speed is close to what the RPM drop is, it won't be too bad. But when it's a big difference, 4000 versus 3274, that's enough of a difference that it's going to cause slippage. And then when you get back to the purpose of the torque converter, it's to allow slippage at the start line so you can launch harder, and that'll shave off probably half a second, maybe in some cases as much as a second. But you could be giving back half a second here, not to mention generating a bunch of heat. So this car here, in this example, if you went with a 3000 stall, you would probably be faster, even though you would have a little bit slower 60-foot time because you'd have less slippage here. And it's possible you could go with like a 3500, a few hundred over what we're looking for, and it'd be okay. But going this much over would definitely be a bad idea. The other thing to consider is the torque converter's stall speed is dependent much on how much torque the engine makes, and also the load. And the load is affected by gear ratio in addition to weight. So when you're looking at this 3274, now you can call up a converter company and have them spec you a converter, a custom converter, or you could get an off-the-shelf one, probably a lot cheaper. Now, depending on the weight of the car and the gearing, and the torque of the engine. If you have a small block without a power adder, a typical small block without a power adder, you could probably go 3500 and it would be okay there. But if you have either a large engine like a 454 or larger, or if you have even a small block with like a nitrous kit can add 200 foot-pounds pretty easily. And so with that case, you want to be conservative. So I'm thinking with most of the people watching this, the idea is to be conservative because nitrous kits are super common at the drag strip. And so with this case here, a 3000 stall would probably be the best choice to make. But I've calculated out these other things to help make it easier, without having to go to the calculator and do it yourself. So like if you're shifting at 6,000, this is showing 3571. At 6,000, a 3500 converter would work great. And down here, I calculated 3500 torque converter in about a 430 gear would work really well. Now that, of course, a 410 gear is pretty close. It doesn't have to be exactly to the number, but these are good rules of thumb that this is giving you. And if you're going up to a 4,000 stall, the calculator said 491, like a 489 is a common one that you see listed, that you could choose when ordering a rear end, or a ring and pinion set if you're changing it yourself. And going up to the 4,000 stall, 6,500 to 7,000. If you're shifting up there, maybe that much stall speed is a good idea. I didn't go to below 3,000 because generally speaking, a 2,500 converter will work with most situations. But as an example for myself, outside, my next victim is an old Chrysler I used to play with that I parked years ago. Now that one has a 727 with a 2,500 converter and 354 gears, mated to a 318 with 340 heads and a cam. That combination worked great. It drove great on the street. It didn't have any hesitation or anything, even with a 780 CFM carb on a 318. So that's another example that's not on the board, but I know from experience that one works. So here you go. This is part 2 of the torque converter section. And between the two, I think it makes it really easy to pick the right one. Take it easy, folks. Back on the road again. Seem to be going pretty good. I don't know which. Could be any of those things. But second test drive is pretty good. gear is real low. One would guess you got to be careful in low gear. Well, there she is. I guess the bog is fixed because it took off nicely. So that was the second thing. I got the timing up a little high. I may have to either back off the vacuum advance or the timing itself. I got the bog fixed as far as the secondary